What is happening, everybody? This is Ryan here for the Scale Up Show. I have a very special guest with me on today. I have Andrew Kahl. Andrew was previously the co-founder of Credent Technologies in 2001 and was acquired by Dell in 2012. Was an executive at NetApp and Juniper Networks. He's former chairman of the Graduate School Alumni Board at Notre Dame, which is pretty cool. Also, the CEO and co-founder of Backbox. And little known fact about Andrew, he's also on the board for Indiana Whiskey Company. Andrew, welcome. Happy to have you on the show.
Hey, Ryan, nice to have you. Thanks for the introduction. That's it's good to be here. It's fun.
Yeah, you didn't expect the whiskey thing, huh? I saw that
I didn't. You got me flummoxed, man.
I saw that in your profile. I'm like, oh shit, I gotta include this at the end. I'm like, this is gonna be entertaining. He's not gonna expect this, and I'm like gonna blindside it. So, anyways, before we get too deep into the show, man, would like to do a real quick revenue rundown so everybody understands what stage of the journey you're at and kind of where you're at in that aspect. So let's start off with where are you at in terms of your ARR?
Yeah, so we're just around 10 million annually, and we've grown that, over between 25 and 30% every year for the last 2 years. So nice little growth rate.
Love that, man. That's really good over the last 2 years. Okay, what's your primary go-to-market for revenue growth?
Yeah, we've got direct sales and we use channel. It's probably about 50-50 in terms of how we go to market. And we're selling directly into IT infrastructure. Happy to give you the spiel on what we do, but direct and with our partners is how we go to market.
Okay, love that. And so is it mostly outbound on the direct side, or what's your primary customer acquisition approach, I guess?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. I mean, one of the things we're shifting to is to be more product-led, growth-oriented. I mean, we've got got demos and trials that people can download. We've got a sandbox where people can get a real feel for the product and play around and see what it feels like within their environment. But digital marketing is something that if you're not doing it, you're going to get left behind. So we've been doing a bit of a blended model, but leaning more heavily on the digital and product-led growth aspect last year.
Okay, cool. And then, yeah, let's hear about your solution. Can you give like maybe 3 to 4 sentence description of it? I got to put those guardrails because otherwise I've had founders talk for 20 minutes about it.
So we're network and security device automation. So think of it this way: every company has one or two or multiple networks. They've probably got hundreds, if not thousands, of security devices connecting to those networks, routers, switches, firewalls. We automate the process to upgrade those, ensure that they're aligned on the network, sure that they have their patches, their upgrades, we identify vulnerabilities. And by automating it, it is a tremendous time saver and cost saver for companies. And so that's what we do.
Okay, I love that. Yeah, I can see a big need for that. How big is your team?
We are about 50 people globally, small but mighty.
Yeah, no, 50 is a good size, man, especially for 10 mil. That's accurate. It's not like the bloated days. Things are starting to calm down when you have a VC-backed company that have 180 people and they're around that 10 million mark. I've seen that before as well. So
yeah, and I've never understood that model. You get some funding and you just go and you overhire, and then you got a cost structure that you've got to get your revenue to catch up with it, and it's just a hard model to manage.
Oh yeah, totally. So, all right, well, yeah, let's get into it, man. That's a real good background. You did. Oh, by the way, you are funded. I didn't mention that in your intro. It looks like your Series A is that, or you beyond that now?
Yeah. So private equity firm Elsewhere Partners is a private equity firm that acquired Backbox a little over 2 years ago, about 2.5 years ago, and they asked me to step in and lead the company as CEO. So I know you mentioned me as a co-founder. Big compliment. I can't take credit for that. 2 other really smart guys started the company, and I've just stepped in to be CEO. So,
okay.
Yeah, Series A funded.
Well, shame on my research department for that oversight. So, but hey, we're still happy to have you on the show, even though you're not a founder. It's still good that you're still doing very good, though.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it, Ryan. Whatever, dude. So anyways, so let's get into your background. And one of the things that we talked about on the pre-show that I was really interested in is just like the foundational elements of some of the things that you told me about that shaped you, that kind of led you down this path, because you have a really impressive history. So walk us through kind of like what happened when you were younger, and then what kind of shaped you to put you on this journey to constantly be kind of at the forefront or in a leadership position.
Yeah, no, I like this question because everybody, usually the first question is, how did you get into tech? And I like that you're phrasing it a little bit differently. We can talk about the tech piece, but Yeah, I believe everybody's got an inflection point or a moment that happens that kind of sets them down a certain path. And for me, kind of a deeply personal thing, I've been fortunate in my career to be a founder or to be a co-founder or to be a CEO and to be in leadership positions. And what pushed me in that direction was when I was 13 years old, my dad worked in the oil and gas industry. And as everybody knows, highly volatile industry. But you go back to the
Mhm.
early 80s, there was a significant downturn in the oil and gas industry in the early 80s. And his job was impacted along with thousands of other people's at the company that he worked at. And I remember he came home from work. I'm 13 years old, and my dad comes home, and I'm like, my dad's home kind of early. I don't know what's going on here. And, he tells the family, my mom and sister, and myself, what happened. And he said, look, company had to let some people go. And series of questions later, it's like, well, why? And did you do something wrong? No, I didn't do anything wrong. It's because financial difficulties. We got to cut costs, et cetera, because the industry's not working. Anyway, I was mad at his bosses for a long time for making the decision. And it was that point in time, I remember going to bed that night, and I remember laying there in bed thinking, when I'm older, I'm never going to let somebody else dictate my future and
Mhm.
impact what happens to me. And so I always thought, well, how do you do that? You do that by starting a business, being in control of the roles that you take on. And so from there, it just impacted me. I wanted to start a company. I wanted to, build something special, or I wanted to be in a position where if I have to make difficult decisions, I do it with elegance and grace. But more importantly, how do I build something sustainable so I never have to put anybody in that position? And that's really what influenced me is I always come back to that story when I was 13 years old when my dad came home and told us what had happened.
Yeah, I mean, that's hard, but everything happens for a reason, right? Like I remember, it's kind of
Yeah.
funny. Like I didn't really think about this until you just told me your situation. But like my neighbor, his dad, one of my best friends, like literally my best friend growing up, lived right next door to me. His dad got laid off. He worked for Alice Chalmers. Chalmers, you
Okay.
remember that company
Yep.
at all?
Yeah, I sure do. Yeah.
I think he worked for them for like this might not be totally accurate, but like 27 or 28 years. And
Hmm.
they fired him like a year before he's supposed to get his pension, before he qualified for pension. That was when pensions were
Oh,
really big.
yeah.
So he stayed with
Yeah.
that company forever and then he got screwed. And so like that shaped me. And then, I remember too, like there was times where I was a revenue leader and then like effectively every year my comp plan would get adjusted. And it was supposed to be like exciting, right? Like, oh, we got this new comp plan, so much excitement, right? And every year it was like, all right, cool, you got to sell way more to make like less
Sure.
than what you made before, right? Which is not a
Yeah.
good place to be in. And I get the economics behind some of it, right? But at the same time, like that's some of what drove me to want to start my own company and do my own thing is so you have an element of control or focus on what you're doing versus like always wondering, or having someone else shape that at a higher degree. So that makes sense.
Yeah, no, again, I think everybody's got something in their background that drives them. And it's just, and look, it's not a control thing. It's just, the person that's going to watch out for me or you is you and yourself. And so just, put yourself in a position to do that.
Yeah, totally agree. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's shift gears a little bit. So you had that, and I know one of the prevailing patterns that you had throughout your life, in your career life, let's say, not even your personal life, but is more around like continual growth and
Mhm.
in creating something and growing it. So like what do you think is critical when you're trying to go from 0 to 1 with not just product market fit, but idea market fit and everything in terms of creating a startup? Like how would you kind of approach it? How have you approached it? And what do you see works really well in those situations, especially in
Yeah.
today's environment?
No, well, especially in today, I mean, things move so much faster now than they did. I mean, I got into the tech space in 1992. My first job was working with Compaq when it was still Compaq. But the pace and the rate of change now is incredible. So yeah, I'd say number one thing you've got to have is decisiveness. You've got to be decisive in the decisions you make, implementing plans, going forward, executing, measuring those. You've absolutely got to be decisive. But from a technology standpoint, or probably any industry, I think the most important thing is you've really got to have a solution that solves an existing problem. If you create something because you think it's cool, but there's no problem out there, or there's no, this is product market fit, I think you're going to end up spending a lot of time and money and find a lot of frustration. So if you really understand, and then you can clearly articulate, hey, here's what we do, here's the problem we're solving, and by the way, here's how we make life easier for you, Mr. or Mrs. Customer, then I think you're onto something. But if you've got to pinpoint that, and you've got to nail that very early on, because that's going to allow you to grow. It's going to allow you to get input, to expand your footprint, find partnerships, and it's just, that's part of the ongoing process is that product market fit.
Okay, so I like that. So decisiveness because of the rate of change,
Yep.
solution that solves an existing problem, clearly articulate it, and then at the same time, it's got to reduce friction or make life simpler as well for the buyer.
And look, the last thing, part of that I'll say is once you figure that out, and once you start getting customers, how you take care of them is critically important. Marketing is hard, building product is hard, selling is hard, but those are kind of finite points in the customer relationship. Once you land a customer, that should be the long tail of the relationship, and hopefully that'll be infinite. And so figuring out your customer retention model is incredibly critical. And the sooner you can do that, the better off you'll be.
Yeah. It's funny. I just read a book, The Product That Scales Itself, or a pre-release of it, and it's about product-led growth. And it talks a lot about that, like saying basically, if you want a really good product-led growth like solution, make sure you have an amazing team, and then just expect to be fine-tuning it for 18 months until you have it at least, right? Like,
yeah, that sounds about right.
That's interesting. Like, that's a longer track record, but like you're trying to understand every single nuance of a buying process without being there effectively in real life. So I think that's probably why. Would you agree with that? Do you think that makes sense?
No, I absolutely do. And your point about the team is right, because first of all, one person can't understand all the nuances, as you say. But if you've got the right team that is getting the feedback from the customer and coming back and pressure testing it with the product, or pressure testing it with the marketing team, how would we position this, and how do we show that there's value if we add this on? It absolutely takes the right team effort to not only get a product to market, but keep it in market as well.
Yeah.
So totally agree with you.
Yeah. There's a lot of balancing. Okay.
Yeah.
So why do you think, let me ask you this, let's talk about the solution that solves the existing problem. Why do you think so many people get that wrong? Because that was, I think, one of the, lack of cash was one reason, but I think the primary reason I saw in some of the studies, and it's not all, that startups don't make it, is because, there's lack of product market fit, which is, basically product, problem solution fit, if you will. So why do you think so many people mess that up in startups?
I think a big part of it, and having a little experience with that, which we can talk about, I think it comes down to just not having the right sample size of data to understand, is there really demand for this? It's really easy to go to one meeting with a customer and hear what their problem is and get really excited and think, oh man, we're onto something. But that's just one customer conversation. You've got to start, you've got to get a bigger sample size, and then you've got to start thinking, okay, is this specific to just one industry or vertical, or can I apply this potential solution across a broader set of customers that might be in different industries or even different regions, but have a similar problem? So it is a long time researching all of that, but you've got to have the right sample size to say, yeah, the data tells me that there is a problem today, or there's a problem out on the horizon that we see coming that we want to try and address. If you try and do it with just, one conversation or, two buddies and a beer, and you think you got a great idea, you're probably in for a long road.
So what's the sample size you use then? What's the minimum versus ideal sample size?
I don't know. Look, these are what we experienced, but I do know that if you talk to 25 customers, that's not enough. If you talk to 100 customers and you start to get some consistency in your data, then you're probably onto something. And I say that because I go back to the days at Credent, which was a software security, a data encryption software company that I was a co-founder of. I think back on some of the mistakes we made early on with some of the problems we were trying to solve. our sample size, our product was way too small. We had a handful of customers and a handful of external advisors giving us input, and we were trying to build something that was so specific just to their needs, but we weren't really applying it to the broader market. And then once we finally did land our first customer after a year, and then that customer introduced us to more customers, to more prospects within their ecosystem. And then we started talking to them and we're like, oh, wow, our original hypothesis was off. We were going in this direction. We need to be going in that direction. And so as that sample size got bigger, we got better input and better data. And then we were able to build a product and get it to market a lot faster. But the early days for us, just talking, I think we talked to I want to say 15 or 20 people that we thought was going to represent the sample size. We were basing too much on our own personal hypothesis, not a hypothesis based on real external market data.
Okay. Did you use the jobs to be done framework then when you were kind of leveraging?
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
Which is interesting. 100. Yeah. I've heard stuff 25 or 30, which is interesting, is like the benchmark. So 100 makes sense. Especially, I think people just don't want to put in the work and wait. Right.
Right.
It's kind of hard. Well, I mean, I think with how fast things are changing, right? You don't want to miss the opportunity.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And so you get excited and you want to get to market quickly because you don't want somebody, potential competitor to do it. You don't want somebody, bigger company that can apply money and hundreds of resources and get something built and spit out faster into the market. So yeah, I understand the temptation to want to move fast, and that's okay. As long as you go back to that original point I made, you've got to be decisive and say, hey, I don't have enough data and I've got to adjust. You've got to be decisive in understanding, at what point do you say go? At what point do you say throttle back?
Yeah. No, I love that. Makes sense. So, okay. So let's shift gears a little bit right now. So how would you, we talked about creating and going from 0 to 1 and the early stage aspect. What about creating a sustainable company during all the economic and technical uncertainty that we have right now? Not just economic, but technical uncertainty that we have.
Yeah, for me, that's always that's a fun challenge, and it's one that I think every place I've been, we've been fortunate enough to do that. And I'm gonna lean back on my background and what I've done mostly, which is, they call it customer success today. That's the term du jour, but I've been doing this since before that even became a term. But it's how do you take care of your customers? Because once you get that customer on board, that's, like I said, the long tail of the relationship. And so retention is absolutely critical. How do we make sure that we are aligned to our customers' needs, not only today, but 12, 18, 24, 36 months out? If we can do that, then we know that we've got some staying power and we know that we've got the ability to retain them as a customer. Beyond that, if we really understand what their strategy is, so do they have strategic initiatives? Let's just talk security. Are they looking for a complete security landscape, from firewalls to encryption to surface area attack management, what have you? If we understand that, then we can either insert ourselves into that strategic discussion and make sure that we're a key pillar, or we can start planning our product to address areas that they're not addressing today that they might be later on. So how can you make yourself more pervasive and valuable to that customer? And that's why getting aligned with them strategically is so important. So many customer or companies view customer success just as renewals and a high CSAT, and those are important. But if you are not really aligning to be part of somebody's corporate DNA for the long term, you're missing a big component of what customer success really means.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, I like the fact that you're including that in your product roadmap as well. It's really sharp. So a lot of people haven't discussed that. So I think that's a really good forward-looking view.
Yeah, it's important. I mean, we have a user group that we host, and we do more. We don't use our user groups as an opportunity to sell features and functionalities. Those are conversations that, for us to be able to share with our customers in a safe space, as they call it, and say, what are you seeing? What are your concerns? What are your problems? And all of that feedback. Our user groups are hosted by our product team and our customer experience team. Nobody from sales is on those calls. It's really driven by that product team, and that for us is an invaluable way to get feedback. We do that for customers both in Europe we actually hosted our North American user group meeting earlier today. So
Oh, cool.
I haven't seen it, but I'm excited to hear the recording on how that went.
Do they love the fact that you guys have those?
They do. I mean, we try and make it fun. Like we send everybody a little box of beer, and we'll do a little social time at the end and talk. And we've been able to develop some friendships. And I also know specifically that some of those customers have become friends and been able to do some deals together as a result of being part of our user group. So yeah, they're highly anticipated by us and by them, and very well attended too.
And how often do you have those?
We do those once a quarter.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
good. So it's almost like a little mastermind format of feedback in terms of that. It sounds like, if you will.
Yeah, it is. And we try and get a nice blend. We try and make sure that there's no competitive overlap. And then everybody's got, we've got kind of term limits. Everybody participates for a year, and then some folks want to stay on, some will rotate off over time. But yeah, it's turned into a nice program, and big kudos to our team for making those successful.
Yeah, love that, man.
Yeah.
So let's shift gears again. And so we talked about that. So I love the aspect of integrating your client in your roadmap and those user groups. What do you think is the most critical thing to focus on when you're selling IT initiatives to top management?
Wow. Don't want to sound cliche on this, but you've got to have demonstrable value right up front. And you've got to make sure that you really understand what their needs are. If you go into a sales cycle, and I know this is not a discussion on how to sell, but if you try and sell something without understanding what their gaps or what their needs are, it's going to be a long, difficult challenge for you. And so what is the value that you can provide, and does that value align to what their gaps or what their problems are? To me, especially now with so much technology coming out of the sun, questions around AI and machine learning, and there's just all these terms and acronyms popping in people's face. You've got to be able to show value really quickly and show that you truly are an expert in what you do. I firmly believe that. Because if I'm going to spend my money on somebody or with somebody in my personal life, I want to know that I'm getting back commensurate value, and that I know the product that I'm getting in return is going to be well vetted, well QA'd, and truly works.
Yeah, totally makes sense. I'm a buyer in the same milk with that, if you will. So
yeah,
what would you say now? So you've had a lot of success. It sounds like things are growing really well. What would you say is your single biggest challenge that you're running into now growing the company?
Longer sales cycles. I think there's a lot of uncertainty. Obviously, the unfortunate events that are happening, the war in Israel. I think from a macro standpoint, you got the election coming up next year, and just the constant skittishness that you hear in the news about the market. It's interesting. We're not seeing deals not happening. We're just seeing deals being elongated in the sales cycle. And a lot of other CEOs that I've spoken to are seeing the same thing. Deals still happen, but it's just taken a little bit longer than normal. So that obviously impacts planning. How are you going to grow? Where do you want to make investments? We're going through our 2024 planning process right now. So it's like, okay, where are we going to make investments? We've got to see how this year turns out before we can, flip the switch on that. But I'd say that's the biggest one I see right now.
Well, you mentioned all the terms of like AI and acronyms that are getting thrown in people's faces. Like, do you have an initiative for 24 to not implement AI into your product? Because I'm making the assumption it already has elements of it in there, right?
Sure. Yeah. Well, there's elements through automation, of course. Yeah.
Exactly. How about like with your people? Do you have a strategic plan to implement that and enable your organization with AI at all, or no?
So we don't have a plan in place. What we have is discussions happening. We're trying to get our arms around what AI really means. What are the capabilities? I think if I can make the jobs of our team easier, help them get things done faster, I absolutely want to do that. Next to that, if we do implement AI, there's got to be a real tangible benefit to our customers. I don't want to implement something just because it's popular or because everybody else is doing it. I still think we're in the very beginning stages of what AI really means. So for us, we're in the infrastructure of an organization. And so if we're going to use AI, I want to make sure that, hey, we can definitively say it's not going to jeopardize your infrastructure. And so I want to be really, really careful about that before we go too far, too fast with AI. But absolutely, we are thinking about it, and thinking about just ease of use and ease of experience first and foremost.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And do you have a favorite AI tool or tool that you use all the time?
No, I'm still learning, trying to get up to speed. I've been having fun with ChatGPT. That's what I've been spending more time on. And whether it was, I actually drafted a couple memos just for fun. I created a silly little poem the other day, and it's pretty cool tool. So I'm still early adopter on that,
Okay,
or novice.
cool. Well, so we're just about up on time, Andrew. Where can people find you? Where can they find out more about Backbox? Not Black Box, Backbox.
Backbox, thank you. Yeah, no, great. So it's backbox.com, backbox.com. Obviously, and then we've also got a LinkedIn page, so look for Backbox. And then you can find me on LinkedIn as well. And, my contact information is on our website. So I love to talk about the company. We got a great team of folks. We got a great sales team. So that's where you can find us.
All right, Andrew. Well, it was awesome having you on the show, man. I love your candor. I love just your hard work, your make shit happen approach to going after things, and congrats on all your success, man.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. I appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun. It's also good to talk to a fellow Midwesterner every once in a while.
There you go, man. All right.
Yep.
Well, thanks for joining us as well, and I will see you on the next episode.
Great. Thanks.